On this week's show, discussing practical AI with Patrick Murphy from Togal.AI. In this week's news, electrification, ISO and ASTM, DOE, and more. All right, we're back. It's cold. There's a cold snap everywhere. Jonathan, I'm surprised you're in the office, but I'm happy to see you in the office. How cold and how crazy is it right now, buddy?
Oh, we're okay because we're above zero. We're at like a whole 5 degrees, but I am in a building that's perhaps a little bit older than other buildings. So I'm on the 9th floor, but I have operable windows and I could feel the breeze when I walked in, man. It was like I walked in and I'm like, oh no, this is maybe a poor decision on my part. But you know what, Jeff? It's cold, but that just means we get some work done, right? You know, you stay inside, you get some work done. It's all easy.
It sounds like you need our boy Jackson Hoggard over there to redo those windows, you know, keep them to their classic style, but upgrade their ability to, you know, maybe keep out the wind, etc. If you guys don't remember Jackson, you got to go back and listen to that episode from Double Hung. They're an awesome one, right? Remember them?
Yeah, it could definitely use that. I don't think that I think we have some energy efficiency issues with this particular building.
Yeah. See? Yep. And Patrick, I think you're going to be the one that blows this on us because I think you're coming from somewhere warm. How you doing this morning?
Yeah, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings here, but it was actually a little unfortunate. I stepped outside and there was a wind chill of 68 degrees today. So you gotta, you really gotta be careful.
You have to put on like a long sleeve shirt, huh? Yeah.
You know, it's getting to the 50s this weekend, so people are already preparing. You'll see hoodies, beanies, gloves. You'll see, boots, the whole deal.
Yeah. I just want you to know I took my kids to school the other day and I asked Google, for the weather. And it said, it's 10 degrees. I was like, that's great. With the wind chill, it feels like minus 15. And I was like, holy cow, this is cold. But I'm not going to complain. We're in a snow cycle. So all of my skier friends, the snow is back. So you can come to Vail and Beaver Creek and you can enjoy yourself. So we're going to have a whole lot of fun with Patrick and his warm, maybe getting chillier environment in a minute. But before we do, we got to pause for the cause.
Construction in general is a highly stressful environment and you see the stress and you always get the I'm fine answer. But I always try to dig a little deeper because people say, I haven't been sleeping great and I'm really eating crappy food and I feel anxious. I feel depressed. I feel, we'll start to really get into those conversations and figure out what's going on. There's some great resources. And if you go to brentdarnell.com/resources, first, there's an emotional intelligence and physical symptoms survey test. So we get your emotional profile and we get your physical profile based on physical symptoms, and we tell how your body's working, and then we can correlate those two. And if you're experiencing burnout, it will show up in probably both of those evaluations. It's free. You just download it and do it. And just so see where you are. And if burnout's the top 2 or 3 that pop up and show up there, I would pay attention and start to really look at what are you doing with stress and nutrition and sleep and exercise and daily reflection and those kinds of things that we know we need to do to keep us healthy and keep us sane and keep us on track.
You've got to check in with where you are. You've got to work on balancing. It's not about the diagnosis. It's about preventing people from getting too far down the road. Like most of our construction folks that listen in, they take care of their cars. They keep them up to date. This is no different. You've got to put in the maintenance on the body, on the mind, because you're racing this car around the track, right? We're not going to change that we're a bunch of race cars out there, but we can change that we do the right maintenance, take the right time, and really check in.
One more resource in there, the Tough Guy Survival Kit, guy being gender neutral. It's specifically written geared toward more field folks, but there's a really great chapter on stress management and peak performance in there. And it talks about meditation techniques and mindfulness techniques and breathing techniques.
All right. You guys remember, we're back on YouTube. Check out youtube.com/@the-ConTech-crew. Subscribe, follow us. You never know. I might call one of you out on the show. I've done that before. But also, I want you guys to keep your eye out for our new newsletter. We're bringing you something new in 2024, some new different look at the news, new different look at our take on the world. Going to even have some guests that are going to come in and write some stuff. If you've got an idea or you want to be on the show, then you can email me at jeff@ironmanofit.com and just reach on out. At the ConTech crew, we focus on technology that solves industry problems. So today, I want to talk to you about Join. Every construction project is a unique prototype, and it's actually shaped by thousands of decisions that impact the owner's business case, design, and the budget. Today, the communication driving these decisions is disjointed across all the stakeholders. Work happens in email, Excel, estimating, resulting in delays, waiting for decisions, waiting for access to information, and sometimes that information is outdated and incomplete. Managing the expectations of the team and keeping the project moving forward is a constant challenge, and a lot of times drives skepticism amongst the contributors. Join empowers general contractors to build with confidence and maximize the potential of every project by connecting these owners through new workflows that fit into your existing processes. We bring design teams and trade partners into a single platform. There's transparency and collaboration in the decision-making, which builds trusts and sets projects up for success. You might be asking yourself, do you need another tool? Well, let me tell you, Join fits in seamlessly with your processes and your other tools. In fact, we're here to help those other tools. Regardless of your estimating system or your project management process, Join will be a valuable added resource without disrupting those other systems and your teams. So listen, put your spreadsheets on ice and leave your email behind for the decision-making platform for the built environment. Learn more at join.build. All right, we're back. So, Patrick, you have a great history. Currently CEO of Togal.AI. I know the viewership is pretty familiar with Togal, but let's take a step back and give a little bit of history of you and your story, and then we'll get digging into it.
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me on the show. Excited to be here. Quick background. Raised in a family business called Coastal Construction, based down in South Florida. My dad dropped out of college, started a construction company because that's what he knew how to do, because that's what his dad did, and been in the family, business since. So I worked, thankfully, in all aspects of the business, in the field, in the office, et cetera. I used to work, with my grandfather, doing takeoffs with a scale ruler on plans, and that's the only way I knew how to do it growing up. And went to college, University of Miami, CPA by training. I worked at Deloitte for a few years. 2010, the BP oil spill happened. There was talk of that oil getting in Florida's, in the loop current of the Gulf coming through Florida. And I was raised in the Florida Keys, so actually put together some oil skimmers and went to work to try to clean up and mitigate there. And that actually opened my eyes to government and my business life. And I was tired of complaining, so my family jokes that I drink some bad water, and I ended up running for office and won in 2012. So I served in Congress for 2 terms, representing the Palm Beach area of Florida up in Washington, D.C. And great experience, learned a lot. Was frustrated though, because so much of the job up there is just about campaigning and getting reelected. There's a lot of really good people, but you don't get to focus on the issues and policies much as I had hoped, certainly. So anyway, without getting too deep into politics and losing 50% of the listeners.
We always joke though, it's an election year. So whichever side you're on, it's one of those, we never know what's going to happen kind of years. And I don't even mean that from the election perspective. It just means policy changes and last minute stuff, because it is about campaigning, et cetera. So, it's a cool year to say that. And I think you're the first congressman on the show. I'm going to be honest. I don't think we've had another one.
Oh, all right.
And as far as I know James was a politician. James was a politician in Texas, right? And it's all downhill from here, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, but look, it was a great experience. Got to meet a lot of great people, and a lot of that experience actually sort of led to Togal in a roundabout way. Because when I rejoined the family business, been blessed. We're in a great market down in Florida. Business is booming. Thankfully, business had grown. I've been gone 12 years, But basically nothing had changed, right? Like a lot of construction companies, and you all know this as good as me, there's just not a lot of tech, not a lot of innovation, right? We've all seen the studies showing that productivity has basically remained flat in construction over the last 50 years, right? And you compare that to so many other industries that have 2x, 3x, 10x increase in productivity. So I started looking through our financials, just thinking, hey, where are the big, buckets? Where are we spending a lot of money? And lo and behold, pre-construction estimating was still the biggest component of our overhead, which is similar to a lot of, subs and contractors. So started kind of peeling back the onion there, what's really driving that number. And 50 to 60% of our team's time was doing takeoffs, right? Just manual takeoffs, getting, plan revisions and constantly pricing and repricing and bidding out jobs. That's not what they love doing. That's the sort of mundane, boring part of the job, right? They want to do the value engineering and the scoping and the bid leveling and, all the things that really help them win more work and help the company, win. So that's kind of when the light bulb went off that, holy cow, what are we doing? Why are our humans coloring for a living, right? If a human can determine the difference in a bedroom and a balcony and a hallway and the difference in a wall and an arrow, then so can a computer if you train it correctly. Started doing some research, and I realized there was no one using artificial intelligence to solve this problem. And as you guys know, no one in like Silicon Valley even understands the problems we deal with in construction. They don't even know what a takeoff is, right? So I started talking to some friends in the industry and and no one really understood the problem. And long story short, started building out the tech. Realized that if you're going to get into AI, you need a really big data set, and it's got to be a clean data set. And that doesn't exist, right? You can't just go buy 100,000 plans online that are labeled appropriately. So that turned out to be one of the big challenges. It took us 3 years to aggregate literally hundreds of thousands of unique, diverse plans and then label them really accurately, right? And happy to get into this more, but we hired 25 architects and engineers to do our labeling. So it was super crisp and consistent throughout, all of our data set, and then build the proprietary algorithms on top of that to get the accuracy that we needed. And we realized sort of early on that we had to at least be 97% accurate because that's what humans are, right? We did some regression analysis for human takeoffs and it was around 97. So I said, look, if we're going to go to market, we got to at least be at 97%. So anyway, we set out to build this company originally just for coastal, thinking if we could save, a few $1,000,000 straight to the bottom line, easy investment to make. As it started working, then we said, holy cow, let's spin this out. Every construction company in the world, no matter how big or small you are, you have to do a takeoff, right, to some degree. So why not? Super scalable. So we spun it out, completely independent company, went to market, and happy, obviously talk more about it, but that's kind of the long and short of it.
Oh, well, it's an awesome, diverse story, but it's really funny. I remember when we came out of, first thing we did coming out of COVID, there was a Hanson Wade's Advancing Pre-Construction, and I met the early group from Togal and was talking to him. And I was fascinated by the idea at first, but then I was sitting at a party a couple of days later back in town, and this guy was like, wait, did I hear you say automated takeoffs? He's like, I'm a lumber distributor. And the number of times we do and redo estimates and takeoffs is killing me. Like, is this for real? And I'm like, it's for real. You should look at it. And then an architect came over and was like, absolutely not. That'll never work, because we do this and we do that. And I was like, it's going to hurt to be wrong, but okay.
Right.
And the lumber guy was like, how do I find it? And I'm like, here's how you find it. I'm like, I said, this was 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. So you guys were really new. And I was like, I'm going to guess it's not quite ready yet and it's coming out. But man, so it's a problem I think everybody in the business has. I don't know that there's a single place I go that doesn't have some sort of heavy investment in takeoff and the time that it takes and a lack of, nobody really loves to do that. It's just like, you don't come across somebody. Yeah. You don't come across somebody who's like, hey, you can pry my takeoff from my cold dead hands. I'm going to do it forever. It's like, nah, not really. And so I had an interesting question though, in that same time frame. collaborative delivery became a thing, right? Like this whole idea of, changing the value engineering to part of the design build process, or IPD projects if you're really going bigger. But nobody realized that actually required a lot more takeoffs, right? Because if you're going to iterate faster, and so pre-construction in general, I think you saw what you saw on the bottom line of coastal growing. I think that's pretty consistent across the industry, that modern delivery methods, which are great, we need them, we want them, but some of the unintended consequences were the need to, like, now we're redoing those takeoffs constantly. And I wonder if that's kind of the experience you guys have had. And then, has automated takeoff, has the ability to use these tools helped in that respect?
Look, 100%. And one thing I'll add to that, and it all kind of connects, is we started with this idea and this thesis that we could automate the takeoff. As we started doing that, as we were sort of unpacking it and talking to industry experts, realized that that wasn't the only thing they needed. There was a whole need to refresh the process. And I'm not trying to bad talk any of the sort of other players in the industry that have been around for a while, but they haven't really changed much in 20, 25 years, right? The UI UX is exactly the same. They're very heavy. They're downloaded behind the firewall. Right. And there's only so much you can do with that. So us being web-based, all of a sudden we can adapt and we can make changes on the spot. So we've got customers saying, hey, move this here, add this there. And, 48 hours later, we can make changes. So we're able to adapt really quickly. We were able to also rethink the whole flow, right? Which ties in, I think, partially what you're saying, Jeff, where we're uploading plans really quickly. We're labeling those plans and those legends really quickly. So if you have a new revision, it's not some like 24-hour process to go through it. You just upload it, click a button, and it labels everything for you. It tells you automatically what changed. Really easy filing system, sharing system, a collaboration system. So if you're working with maybe a distributor, a shipper, a subcontractor, the client even, it's basically Google Sheets, but on your plans. So you don't have to email a plan or a revision and make sure they've got the same plans. And if you have a comment about, A.2.32 in the bottom right-hand corner, I have a question about this symbol, just write a little note right there, share it live with them, and you can comment right there like you would on Google Sheets. So being able to, sort of rethink and reimagine what a takeoff is connects a lot of dots, right? Because if you're pricing, if you're getting, a lot of sub numbers, if you're talking to that distributor, and now all of a sudden you get a new set of plans with a lot more nuanced, information, you got to get that timing right for when XYZ widget is delivered. Now you can do it in real time. So that builds, I think, on a lot of things to come as well.
I wanted to piggyback on that just real quick because, I've seen some of these solutions start out with the PDF takeoff. And I think the one thing we can say about AI that's been consistent is experience matters. The data set, the length of time that's spent training and the focus of that training, like you talked about, really differentiates between, it's almost like a person. It's like someone who's been trained on 10 buildings versus 10,000 buildings. I mean, it's that big a difference. And, you talked about trying to figure out with your distributors and with that supply chain, what's going to happen. I've seen a lot of moves, and I was really wondering if Togal was going to look at this at all, from suppliers trying to say, we want to look at Dodge. We want to look at some of these clearinghouses of all the buildings that are coming out in our area and say, do we have enough raw materials close to those building sites? And also manpower. Like I've used similar things to Togal to try to figure out, do I have enough people to do this job? And once you have that intelligent takeoff, you can do that. But are you looking at the supply chain and maybe helping the supply chain understand what's needed? You're down in Florida. So occasionally Florida needs a lot of supply chain all at once. You know what I mean?
Or then we need nothing at all. Right? It's like here or here. There's no middle steady market. It's too much or too little. Yes, and if I was in politics again, my team would be yelling at me for saying this. But one of the potential revenue streams that we see as a real opportunity is basically, I think what you were just saying there, John, where just say we get a set of plans or 100 sets of plans from contractors in Florida. And they start to see, wow, there's a job with 32 elevators wouldn't Otis and Tyson Krupp and a few others like to know that information? And wouldn't they want to start bidding on that ahead of time when that early set of plans came in, or whatever the widget is, right? That's in those plans. And then not only bid on that and, potentially sell that information. That's one way to look at it. But what you were just saying, starting to plan, holy cow, there's a lot of growth right now in Austin, Texas or whatever. Look at all these, files coming in. So I think there's a huge data component to this that, again, when it's uploaded live, you can get real-time information.
That's powerful. John, you had more though.
I think my next question was actually going to be a capability that I was wondering about. So I looked at what you were doing and you're connecting it up to ChatGPT, and that allows sort of a different thing to happen. That allows this sort of English language interrogation. And I know that I much prefer asking how many pumps there are to trying to count them. How has that been received by the people who have tried using your engine there?
So, like you said, it's Togal.GPT. It's I guess self-explanatory for many, but there's a couple of unique things in it. So our users are uploading all of their construction documentation, from their plans to the RFIs to the specs to the schedules to the budget, you name it. Just upload everything in whatever format it is, and then just have a conversation with it. So if you're an estimator and you're sitting in the office and you're trying to figure out some scoping document, just have a quick conversation with it instead of, not that you don't have to read it, maybe, still do. I'm not advising that. But if you have a specific question on scoping, just type it in. You get the answers. If you're in the field and you're, arguing with the sub or the client or whatever, and I don't know, the caulking's missing on a window on the 11th floor, who's responsible for installation of the windows on the 11th floor? It'll tell you. You don't have to call the attorney. You don't have to go through the scoping document. You don't have to call the, project engineer and you just get it right on the spot, problem solved right there. Who's responsible for the, appliances in the penthouse, whatever the question is. What's the size of the dishwasher? Like, it's amazing how quick it is and how detailed it is. But two important points I want to make sure, because we get this question a lot. Number one, we're not hallucinating because we're not open to the entire internet. So we are only reading the information that the user uploads. So if they didn't upload that particular piece of information, we just don't give an answer. We tell you we don't have it. So that's important because we're not making crap up. Number two, it's secure. OpenAI, Microsoft can't train on a customer's data, right? They do the training on their own. And so it's not like open to the world of training here. It's locked off and super secure. So anyway, two important caveats. We are releasing a mobile version of this. So it's friendly on your iPad or phone as you're walking a job site. So that'll be sort of a next iteration of it. What it does for us too, for Togal, is expand, I think, our TAM, right? From just your estimators really to now your field teams that have these questions.
Well, and it connects a lot. I mean, that's the key to all the data sets that we have and all the tools that we've had, and why so many of them haven't reached potential is they're not connected workflows yet. They're not really connecting through with what our construction people do and how we do it. You hit that earlier with just the ability to start to use a set of plans like a Google Sheet to share and not having to go back through takeoffs over and over. That's matching the technology to a new process so that we can rethink how we're delivering buildings completely. And now this is taking a pretty locked up data set and doing it and making it available. And I was just thinking, like, the void of not having a hallucination is also like, how many people just don't know if you have that spec or not? And how hard is it to figure out? And you're never sure if you're really right. But now if you've uploaded it and you ask if the spec's there or not, it's going to come back and go, no. And you're going to go, okay, now I know what to do. Yeah. Right? Like, I didn't spend 3 days looking for a needle in a haystack because I didn't want to feel either A, stupid, which we all do when we think we might have lost something or can't find it, or B, combative. And you want to just know. So it's an awesome opportunity to sort of take that data and do something with it. But I think it was really important that you covered, this is how you use these giant models that Microsoft and OpenAI are creating in a walled aspect. Everybody knows that I've been the naysayer of AI in many respects because of the dangers of it. Right. And, I covered this last week, so it's out there. we're pretty sure that generative AI and it has reached the peak of inflated expectations, and that unfortunately means the trough of disillusionment is coming. But that's meant on a global, right? That's meant as everybody thought it was going to do everything that they ever wanted it to do every day, and they were only going to do the things they wanted to do. That's just not true. It's just not going to happen. So this is a very tactical and practical use of how you start to consume the large language models, the ability to distribute them. So I'm wondering what else, and sort of at the core, how this flows with what else you guys are doing and where you see it going. Like, again, this kind of dovetails into, you've been in leadership, third generation in this company, right? You worked with your grandfather, your father. What should construction leaders be really worried about? Like, total side note, but I forget who did the survey recently, but like, of all the technology that's come out over the past 10 years in construction tech, it's never really showed up on an executive survey. And on this executive survey, AI showed up in like 75 to 80% of concern for leadership in construction. So I'm interested, what should those leaders be thinking about? Where would you put your head, since you can, jump yourself into the family business as well? You get this dichotomy.
Yeah, great question, and appreciate the setup. I think there's a lot of reasons we could spend many episodes talking about why technology hasn't transformed in construction. But I think one of the real reasons is, number one, many people in Silicon Valley or others have no idea the problems we face, and they don't appreciate the level of detail and nuance in construction. And they look at the problem, they say, oh, you just stack some bricks and you put a little drywall and paint, and the thing kind of builds itself, right? They have no idea. Everything we build is basically unique, right? I mean, unless track homes or something, but basically it's one of a kind. You have a new architect, a new engineer, a new building system, new GC, a new sub, a new building code official, whatever. And it's always different. And so we also know that not everything is uniform, right? Electrical engineer can use different symbols for electrical outlets or fixtures, and that's not all the same. And, you can go on with millions of examples, because at the end of the day, architects are artists, right? They're dreaming up something and then trying to make it, doable. And we got to figure out how to build that stuff. So the technology has not been affordable, in my opinion, up until now. Where finally, thanks to AI and these large language models and generative AI and whatever the heck's coming down the pike that I couldn't even dream of, we can finally process the historical amount of information that exists, millions and millions of data sets to inform future decisions. But we can also use that AI to tap into the regulatory bodies and information that's there, whether it's a local code, a fire code, an MEP code, life safety, whatever it is. And AI is really good at doing that math, right? And the combination of those two things, all of a sudden, I think, puts us in a position where generative AI will transform our industry. And I have no idea how soon or how long this will take, but I think in our lifetime, there'll be three inputs if you're designing a new job. What's your address, what's your budget, and what's your style of construction you're looking for, right? And you say, hey, I live on, 101 First Street, whatever. And the computer will automatically know, okay, well, here's the setbacks to that area. Here's the density of the job. Here's what it can look like. Here's how high it can be. And you tell it the budget is, okay, moderately priced. Okay, can't be too fancy of finishes, right? And then a style. You want Mediterranean or British colonial, whatever the hell you want. And it starts drawing that picture. But it's not just going to be the pretty picture. It will be the mechanical, the electrical, the plumbing, the structural drawings, because, again, it can tap into the history of all the plans that have been built and the rationale there, but also understand the regulations and engineering code that have informed those decisions in the past. That convergence will be transformational, I believe, in our industry.
Looking at our industry and thinking about how AI is coming in as a new player, and it really is, and it's coming in really strong. As you deal with people that are new to this, how do you help them understand both limitations of what your product can do, but also give them an ability to sort of back check? I was looking a little around, and I'm like, if we're going to rely on you to give us our takeoff, we're going to want some level of proof and accountability. How do you talk to those people that are looking for that and are perhaps skeptical, and rightfully so, because a lot of people start out. You have a lot of other businesses doing this poorly. You guys have been around a long time. You have the experience and can do it, but not everybody can do that.
John, this was probably the single biggest oversight in us launching, quite frankly, was I guess our optimism hope that people would see the automated takeoff and say, heck, I can save 8 hours or 2 weeks of work, depending on the size of the job, upload it, see the results, trust it, and go. And while some are, sort of leading edge folks willing to do that, most people in our industry, and I knew better than this, wanted the ability to do it manually and to check it and to have the tools to maybe move a wall, move a dot, add something. And at the end of the day, technology is not perfect, right, no matter what. So we launched sort of the AI, had our accuracy, upwards of 97%. Knew we would improve it over the, months and years to come. But then we had to go back and spend like 9 months adding all of these manual features to give the user that feel and look that they were used to. That forget the AI for a second, that I just want to be able to draw this box and know it works like another tool I might be used to. So oversight on our part, we've now built those features. I feel we're, shoulder to shoulder with any of the sort of existing, tech that maybe someone's used to. Obviously, we have a roadmap. We have plenty of features to add on that front, but I think we're basically there to your point. So it was an oversight. I think we fixed it. And interestingly, since we've had the chance to do this with, sort of 25 years now of advanced technology, have been able to build, I think, in a more intuitive, easier fashion where we can streamline a lot of that workflow. So even if you're not using the AI, just doing a manual takeoff on Togal will be a lot faster.
You are expressing something that I've heard from a lot of people building AIs. We even were talking to somebody who had to turn off the generative design aspects of his product for a little while people got used to the idea. Thank goodness everybody's kind of getting to the point where that's more normal. Can I ask you a side question? What in the world is behind you that you have like a White Castle something going on back there? Like what is that for those of you just listening? You can't see them. Yeah, those are awesome Legos. They're like 3 times the size of my Legos.
Yeah. So about 10 years ago, we were approached with a new building concept, and we all get approached with these new ideas, and like most people, kind of roll your eyes. You're like, yeah, it sounds too good to be true. And the gentleman kept coming back. No, you got to believe me. This is real. My dad and I flew to Turkey in 2010, actually, and he had built a 10-story apartment building out of these Lego blocks, for lack of a better word. Holy cow, there's people living in this building, right? It's 10 stories. That's pretty legit, right? So we said, all right, let's take a look at this. Started unpacking it, and I'll try to give you a short summary, but the company is now, and the product is called RENCO, which stands for Renewable Composites. It's made of recycled glass, recycled plastic, calcite, right, like a limestone dust, and then a resin that holds it all together. So it's a composite, but for conversation, you could almost look at it like a fiberglass. Super strong, super durable. Our first building that we built in Palm Beach, Florida, is a 96-unit apartment with this. They gave us, as you know, wood is 25-year lifespan, typically concrete, 40 years. Insurance company gave us 250 years in our very first building. We think we'll get it over 500 years. So super durable, which means lower insurance costs, right? Super strong, super easy to assemble. You see, it's Lego blocks. We were on the cover of E&R not too long ago, and that's literally the plans that we use. They are color coded. So when you're out there building, you get these Lego blocks. They weigh like 8 pounds, and you stack them in place. Okay, you get a red one, you get a blue one, you get a green one. All unskilled labor. So it's very fast. No crane, no heavy equipment needed. Oh, wow. You can do a floor in a few days, right, with this. There's no cure time. There's no rebar. There's no inspections. So very fast, very affordable. It's about 20% less expensive than a comparable structural material, whether that's wood or concrete or whatever. So yeah, really exciting company. We're actually just about to complete our first manufacturing facility in the United States in March of this year. We've been supplying out of Turkey, where our big factory is. As I mentioned, finished our first building in Palm Beach. We passed all the international building code. We can build in basically 99% of the U.S. today. We are approved fully ready to go. Hurricane, category 5, tested, have the 2-hour fire rating, off gas, termites, like everything you need. We've spent like a decade doing this crap, but it's a really cool system, and excited to bring it to market.
That's really cool.
Right.
I mean, so how do you build with it? So this is you hit the architect thing before, right? They are creative. Well, but this is a system that has a set of constraints now, but it's not. I mean, it's not like you said, okay, here's the only ways you can build the Legos. By the way, I do have to build Legos from the thing they give me because my creative brain makes things that fall over. So how does somebody consume this? Like, how do you see this as you build that factory? You're not going to just want your own people doing it. So how does that work?
It's so cool, and this is what's so say revolutionary, but I really don't want this to be stuck in this like modular prefab mindset, because that's very limiting, right? And you get kind of model A, B, or C. And I think we're kind of like the opposite of that in many ways, where like Legos as a kid that you're playing with, you can build sort of whatever you dream of because the sizes of the pieces are completely variable. So we have 2-inch pieces, and we have 42-inch pieces, and everything in between. And with the combination of those materials, whatever you or the architect sort of dream up, send it to us, or overnight we run it through a software that then comes up with the ideal block configuration. We like to get plans in the sort of SDDD phase because we might have to move a wall 1 inch to fit, our configuration, or 2 inches here, but like minor, tweaks to it before you go to construction docs. And we tell you, okay, here's how many blocks you're going to need. We ship it to you, shows up in a crate. You pour a slab. We have an anchor bolt system for our first course, and then you stack the blocks from there. It's glued together. You'll love this. We actually went to Boeing like 8 years ago, and I'm sure you realize that Dreamliner, you know about this, is glued together, right? And it's a composite system. So, a lot of the new composites, boats and planes are glued together. The glue joint acts like a weld. Chemical reaction occurs, and it's actually stronger than the material in the block itself. So in our first building, for example, 3-story building, that 35-foot wall is basically monolithic because the glue joint connects all of it. So it's incredibly strong. So you stack the block, you put a glue joint, boom, you put it down. We got a 2-hour cure. And the blocks, I don't know if you can tell from behind me, but they're hollow on the inside. So you can run your MEPs through the middle of the block. You can put one of the channels, you can fill with insulation, put your drywall on, and you can get R factor of, whatever you need based on your local building code. So really easy to assemble, put together. And one last thing I'll mention is the finishes of the finishes. You can put, marble, all right, on the inside and stucco on the outside, or a wood cladding, or, it could be a Four Seasons, or it could be workforce housing, or anything in between. So we're just the structure of it, and again, can configure to basically any design you dream up. And Jeff, if you decide you want like around a building, we'll make a mold for you. It's $25,000, call it, for a new mold. Do that mold, and you'll have a round building. It's no problem, right? We're just trying to standardize everything to the best of our ability.
That's going to be awesome for prefab. I'm just telling you, like I'm a plumber mechanical, and if we could prefab the wall that the carrier assemblies are on and ship it out all at once, man, that's game changer for modular, because modular doesn't need to be modular on the outside, but on the inside for mechanicals, modular wins. It just wins on money.
And since these blocks are coming out of a mold, they're perfect, right? If we tell you there's a 10-foot opening, there's a 10-foot opening, right? Like that's what it is. It's not a half-inch off or something. So to your point, Jonathan, what I think is the future, really to make take this to the next level. Yep. Is prefabbing those bathrooms and those closets and kitchens and all, and plugging them in because they're going to fit correctly, right? And all those MEP systems, I think we can really start to expedite the finishes of these. So, I could go all day about this, but I don't say revolutionary, but I think a big change for the industry.
It's hugely revolutionary, and in this respect, I think it's okay to say it. Like I'm a big fan of the evolutionary side of change of process, change of technology, et cetera. But this is one of those revolutionary that we need. We need the ability to think differently and do differently. And it's really funny that it is something as, inspired by Lego, so to speak. And, but delivering on creativity and delivering on the necessities of what each area needs. I mean, I live in a in a ski town, and right in ski towns across the country, it, you know, like anywhere else, housing's a huge thing, but it's also critical here that it work like that. And it's funny, the other day, my son and I were having a discussion because they were doing some modular work here. They were bringing in prefabricated huge sections of this new housing unit that's being put in, and I was like, hey buddy, this is what I talk about. And he's like, wow, that's really cool. Like, they're just bringing them in. And look, Dad, there was nothing here but a slab the other day. And look, there's like 12 of them now. And I was like, exactly, bud. This is how this is going to work. So, and now I can't wait to show him the giant Lego set, because, you know, this is also how we inspire the next realm of builder to come along, because it's new, it's different, but it's also inventive, and carbon footprint on that is low.
Oh, if it lasts 200 years. Oh yeah.
98% more green than concrete.
And if you can outlast them, Patrick, I mean, that's where green really starts, is you don't have to build another building. If green over 100 years means 3 different buildings get built, that ain't very green, is it?
No.
I had a quick question for you on Togal, and I just wanted to interject before I lose it. If somebody wants to mess with that, because I think, you know, I estimated for a very, very long time. So I had a million estimates sitting beside me, and I had the PDFs that go with them. If somebody wants to try out Togal and say, hey, I want to get an estimate off them and look at my own estimate, how do they go about that? Like, do you have a free trial to start with? Is there a way to sort of get some of those tests done?
100%. Website www.togal.ai, Togal.ai. Email me, PEM@Togal.ai. We'll get you set up on a demo. Obviously, you know, free onboarding, it takes 20, 30 minutes, especially if you're an estimator, you're going to pick it up in 15 minutes. And free onboarding, 14-day free trial. Obviously, happy to work with people if they need a little more time. But, you know, our normal flow is get a couple of the team members, a couple of estimators signed up, let them use it, answer their questions, do a couple rounds of kind of Q&A as they're getting, signed up. And we've had quite a few clients do sort of independent tests of their own, system, whatever they might be using, comparing it to our AI. And we have some of those surveys and knock on wood, we're passing all those tests. But again, what is interesting, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, is the AI is attracting a lot of people, but I think we're selling just as many people on the workflow, on the collaboration, on the exporting of the documents, the labeling of the documents, getting their teams all synced up on one place online. Someone's sick, who cares? You all keep working. You want to assign one guy doors and this girl flooring and this one drive. It doesn't matter. Everyone's working at the same time, right? With the collaboration, so all these other features I think, are actually closing more deals, interestingly enough. So anyone wants to sign up, love to see you, give you a trial demo and see what you think.
That's really cool, because I'll draw it back to Advancing Precon years ago when I heard about you guys. And then this last year's Advancing Precon, talking to Johnny on the floor about that he was amazed that, to him, the AI, was the thing, and the automated takeoff and the ability to do this. And he said, the funny thing is, we had to build all of these tools for, that the checking and the workflow and manual and doing it sort of that way, but with a new UI and a new flow. He said, I think they're just as powerful in changing people. And I was like, Johnny, look, 10 years ago, I helped a company go from a software that didn't even exist anymore, and we were using little printer port pieces as the licensing, and we had to move to a modern Takeoff, and we had to do it side by side. I had 2 estimators on a set of jobs for a period of time until the leadership was ready to say, okay, this works the same way, right? Because you just can't lose money there. So the interesting thing is that process probably never go away, no matter how advanced the tools get. Somebody's going to want to trust, but verify. So, and then you do get your moment, John, where you go like, okay, I trust this, let's roll. And that's when the piece goes.
One of our biggest customers, Clark Construction, I don't know their entire tech stack, but their team is basically using Togal exclusively now, right? And this is Clark. They're, I don't know, what, 8-10 billion a year or something, and they trust this. We're talking to like 5 of the 10 largest GCs in the U.S. and 2 other international conglomerates right now with like, multi-hundred thousand user contracts. And they've been doing a lot of this analysis and study that you're saying. But Jeff, just to say your point on, if I put my coastal construction hat on, we just changed accounting softwares. And for like 3 months, we're running in parallel
there's
because
certain
you can't mess that up either. So you got to do it, right? I get it.
there's certain areas you can roll the dice and there's certain areas you can't. And ERP and pre-con are pretty much two of those. Your accounting and your pre-con are two areas where that can be catastrophic to the business, not just to how people feel about technology. But it's interesting to see, and again, we can have another show around why Coastal would change out the ERPs, because it is just not it's not a flashy topic, but it's a foundational building block to any organization's ability to continue to move forward, is taking a look at those harder to do things and future-proofing them. I'm sure that the process that went into that, it looked at not what does Coastal need today, but what do you need 10, 15 years from now, as far as you can see down the line.
And I mean, I tell you too, we talked about doing this like 6-8 years ago, and we didn't do it because we're too busy. We finally got to like almost a breaking point where we had to rip the Band-Aid, and it was a year of work for our accounting team and different functions to get prepared. And we finally did it. We'll be that much better because of it. But man, I look back at some of the things we had to do and the amount of extra work we were doing. It's just so inefficient. So obviously hindsight's 2020. We all wish we would have done it. We didn't live and learn, but I'm sure a lot of construction companies are dealing with that in some tech or something they're using. Not that I'm one to give advice, but just rip the Band-Aid.
Hey man, that is your mic drop, man, because it really is. We sit through so much pain and waste so much time when really just making the move now, doing it and getting it done it's gonna eliminate tons of pain, and it's gonna lift people up to do the jobs that they really need to do so the business can grow. I'm sure if you look over that, there's moments in time when the company could have grown bigger that it didn't, because you were spending so much time in the system instead of on the business itself. And that's, man, I know there's, BIM departments that can do this. There's project management teams, there's ops teams, there's, accounting teams, there's pre-construction teams of all sorts that, have boat anchors holding them back from winning more work, growing the business, and working on delivering a much better product. And that's, that could be the takeaway from this whole thing for people, is like, changes that come, and either do it now or it'll just be more painful in 6-7 years.
And when I say relative to AI, there's all sorts of fear and concern around it. Look, AI is not going to take your job, but the person using AI will. And if you've got team members that really know how to utilize the AI tools that are out there, they're just going to run circles around you. Right? It is just so powerful, whether it's in the legal department, project management, or estimating department. The companies that are really pushing their teams to find the new technologies. I'm biased toward Togal, but there are others in other departments out there. It's going to supercharge a lot of teams and allow them to grow exponentially compared to their competitors.
I like that, because that can then be drawn back to lots of innovations that have happened. The one I think of is the internet. I mean, I am what I am in an IT world from 25 years ago because I learned how to use Google. And Google was the first one to ever catalog the blue screens of death that Microsoft got. So you could take the number, place it into Google, and find what the source of the problem was and fix it. So I never was really that good. I just learned how to use the latest tool to do my job better, right? To be informed. And wow, here's another one in that ever-changing, continually moving forward process. So it's a great little way to tell people how this thing's going to affect it. John, you had one thing to say before I jump us into where we got to go next, buddy.
I did make a couple points, and I want to make one about that testing the AI. Is if you test that against your personal takeoff, don't assume that your personal takeoff was right. There is a very good chance very good chance that when you say, no, it took off too many bathtubs, it's right and you were wrong. Because that particular AI has taken off 10,000 buildings and you probably haven't taken off that many buildings yet. So I wanted to add that, since I was a little bit harsh on it, is I have found that technologies like this, oftentimes the first thing is, oh, we're checking to see if it's right. And then the second part is, we found some errors, but it turned out to be us, not it.
I can fully confirm that, because I have consulted a lot of companies going through it. And we had one where they threw up the red flag, and then we said, okay, let's get the other estimator involved. And then the other estimator's like, you missed this floor.
Yep.
And he's like, oh no, I did. Okay. So yeah, I mean, a lot of times you'll find out it was you. Cause I mean, look, we're human. We make mistakes far more than the computer will on but we are far more equipped to do things a computer is not yet ready to do. And that's a beautiful thing. We can make decisions. We understand intent, design, what someone wants out of a building or a project. So these are the things that we can do. So awesome episode. Patrick, I'm so thankful you sat down to talk to us today. I'm really excited about where Togal is. And I'm excited to have you be, with us through the news, because, you have such a nice background, and we're going to hit a couple areas. So I think you'll enjoy this. So with that, we are going to get into the construction technology news of the week. All right, Jonathan. I always love Jonathan's articles. We know where they're leaning.
I'm going to kick it right back to AI. All right. So Qmerit AI automates home electrification. And it's basically an AI that's been designed to look at the problems that exist between electrical distribution and endpoint design. So, you're buying a new electric car, you're building a house, and instead of having a stove and a water heater like every other house, you want to have all the electrical appliances and all the electrical extras. And that's not an easy thing. So you have to go in, you have to inspect the house, you have to look at the panel, you have to figure out all of this stuff that exists on what's called the microgrid. So microgrids are between distribution and your actual house. This AI has been trained with, and you'll appreciate this, Patrick, 269,000 installations, and thousands of data points on those. And it's being done in conjunction with Schneider Electric. We know them really well. And what it's really, focused on is, we're looking at, how do we electrify America? How do we do this? How do we move from gas being, the primary energy, or other liquids being the primary energy, to electrical? And that means a big change. And AI is perfect for this, because there's a lot of domain specific knowledge. What I really liked about the article, Jeff, is they talked about working with the technicians, understanding the terminology, understanding the actual build part. Like one of the things that gives me hope for Togal is that it's coming out of construction. It's not coming out of Silicon Valley pointed at construction. It's coming out of construction. And what they've done with this is they've brought this out of electricals. They've worked with the electricians. They've tried to get this problem solved. And it was a big problem. It's very time consuming to do those calculations. And, they're apparently having great success. They've opened up an API so that you can actually, tie it into other applications. So it's now become something for all of us people building little apps to look at and saying, how can this help me better understand what is needed in a house? So it's a really good article. I think it goes into better detail than I see in a lot of them. And I just thought it was cool. What do you think there, Jeff? Did you get a chance?
I did, and I really like a couple of things on this one, because it's well timed, as usual, Jonathan. Yeah. Very well timed, because we saw some serious problems across the board with this cold snap. Usually we see this stuff when it comes to a heat wave, right? And we see AC, etc. But this was a cold snap, and there was talk of brownouts in places and people worried. And then electrified vehicles struggling to get charged because of the constraints and the cold and the extreme cold. and then not having enough. And, we've talked about electrification's not going away. And so it's got to be understood. And there's just a paragraph that nails this as to why Schneider would do this. It's by providing homeowners and contractors with a better understanding of the propensity for a home to deploy these technologies and streamlining adoption. The resource pool available for what they're calling virtual power plants will continue to grow. The U.S. Department of Energy has set a target of 20% flexible behind the meter resources as a key requirement to meet our decarbonization. So this is taking that information to home builders, to homeowners, to those people and contractors that are building. We say this, if we fix cities, it's only a small portion of the problem.
Yeah.
We've got to fix homes. The smaller contractor needs more tools. The two people in a truck need to understand. There was a piece in there about installing wire was one thing, but if you install the wrong wire and then you've got to come back and rewire everything, that's a loss, right? That's a cost. It's just, so knowing that these things are there and being able to predict it so that you build out the homes of the future to be future-proofed, that's another opportunity, man. So I love it. Patrick, I'm interested. You're riding along with us. What are your thoughts on it?
Two thoughts. One, if you want to improve your business, a good place to start is just looking at the data, right? Just taking off any bias and looking at every data point, looking at those trends. And if you zoom out and look at the country or the world, you got to know the data. And we're flying in the dark in many ways right now. So there's policymakers trying to make decisions like you're alluding to here on the electrification and don't really understand all the data. So empowering those folks that are doing the installation, that are making those purchases to get that data and help the policymakers make better decisions makes sense to me. It doesn't happen overnight, but piece by piece, it will add up and make a big difference. So that's number one. But then what this company is doing with Schneider is in the bucket that I would consider the AI sort of optimization, right? Taking current tools and processes and just supercharging with AI. And that's, I guess you could say, like OCR is the first level of AI, but that's kind of behind us now. This is like the next real big wave, I think, where we are already seeing AI impacting our lives in various ways. So I'm going to say infinite, but there's countless number of opportunities like this that I'm really excited about. That, there's probably a really bad analogy I'll get in trouble for, regret one day, but like with Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, like you had this big surge and then it collapsed, but now it's kind of coming back, right? Slowly but surely. And I think maybe there's some parallels with AI where there's this huge surge and expectations were here, going to fall, but it will rebuild, right? It will come back. And I think in 5-10 years, we'll be having this conversation like, holy cow, right? There's a lot of things that change because of AI.
Yes, that Dunning-Kruger curve seems to show up everywhere I look lately.
Yeah.
It's the Gartner hype cycle, man. It's the Gartner hype cycle. You have the peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment, the slope of enlightenment, and the plateau of productivity, man. That's every single one goes through that. That's why at the beginning of this rush, although I do think this is kind of the Gartner hype cycle on some sort of accelerant, because AI is going so fast. It went up, it went down, and now it's starting to come up. I agree with you there. And an interesting one, I didn't even think about public policy, Patrick, because Jonathan, I think it was you that brought this article to us at one point. There was a municipality that was trying to require a number of EV charging stations. And finally, the power company went, wait a second. That's going to pull more power from our grid than the entire city. You can't, you're scoping that you have to do that, and you're not thinking about what that's going to do to our power grid. We can't do that. And again, I'll give a little bit. Politicians can be a little bit dense on certain things at times. No offense, Patrick, but also they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Right? They just think it's electricity. Yeah, it's just electricity. It's just more of it, right? It's like, well, no, EVs take a lot. So Cool article, Jonathan. Now you can bore everybody with your next one. I'm kidding.
Okay, yeah. So I'm not bored because we need these things. And so ISO and ASTM have finally put out a standard for additive manufacturing and construction. It's not a requirement, but it's, these are the guidelines for structural additive manufacturing. And, one of the things that's interesting, and I see this more and more as we move forward and things become more technical, you have ISO working with ASTM for the first time in releasing a standard, and they just don't do that. They are like two addressable markets that are side by side that don't like to talk to one another, in my opinion. They're finally releasing it, and this was something that's desperately needed. Jeff, I know that I told you that when AR came out, when augmented reality came out, I was more worried about safety than anything else, because I had tried on the headsets, and after about 4 or 5 hours, I had tunnel vision. I'm like, people walking around on a job site with this is not good. This is not safe. This is not awesome. But they're hitting both additive, but they're also looking back and adding to some of the standards they have around robotics, particularly collaborative robots. And people, when you're thinking about collaborative robots, don't think about like the little R2D2 robots. These are like, if you are standing in the same cell as another robot that is doing something, or a machine that's doing something, these are the standards that say that's safe to be around. Because robots in particular in construction are built to lift and move heavy things, and there's not a lot of forgiveness there. So having some standards is really a big deal for me. I think it's also, like, for me, it's one of those critical things on the roadmap of new construction methodologies that go with materials. Just as much as Patrick's blocks need to be approved, we need to, the second you see major organizations that are setting standards and approvals, look at additive and go, yep, we're setting it for that. You can guess what's next. Next is, okay, cool, we have the standards now. The expectation is that we will start to build more with these products. So I was really happy to see it. It is a boring article. It's definitely one you should read if you're looking at adding robotics to your fab shop. And if you're at all interested in additive, and all you plumbers out there, if we could have additives building just like catch basins and other like concrete structures for us, we could pay them off. So like, regardless of what trade you're in, look at this. This is worth understanding, worth thinking about. And I'm really hoping that we start to see more small additive robots on job sites and in construction, in the very near future. But what do you think there, Mr. Jeffrey?
I agree with you, but first I'm going to do what we don't do on the other show we're on together. Is ASTM stands for the American Society for Testing and Materials. ISO stands for the International Organization for Standardization. I will put a link out so if people can learn a little bit more if they're a little bit behind on that, because that's what I always have to do with Jonathan, is try to keep up. But I'm with you, man. I think just like what we saw with Patrick's innovation and what we saw, I mean, this is pretty cool. Jonathan, you and I seem to do this together a lot. We had the Phantom Homes on.
Yeah.
And it's same kind of thing. It had to go through the process. And I'm sure Patrick would shake off 10 years of getting that there for some faster standards, some faster ways to get these types of materials allowed in and certified in, that they can be engineered and they can be used and they're safe, right? Like that's going to help us bring in more materials, more ways to do this. And I'm with you, John. I was on that hype cycle of what additive manufacturing could do for construction, and just what I thought and the reality just didn't match.
Yeah.
Right. Like it just didn't work. Like I always thought, oh, we're going to print that fixture we needed, or we're going to print that thing we were missing. And it's just like, no, that's not how it works. We all know that as you start to look at it, it's just not cost effective. It is more cost effective, unfortunately, to drive to Home Depot and get that part off the shelf and bring it back and install it than it would be to do some sort of like that. But when you start talking about the catch basins and you start talking about those little things we can do, those are huge, because the little things pile up. Mm-hmm. And not to get into some of the things we do together, but like when you're talking about value stream mapping and process mapping, these are where saving a single step in a process hundreds of thousands of times can drive money back on the bottom line and free up what we don't have, labor. to do more value add than they could before. So I love it, man. I'm super interested in it.
I got to add one more thing just for the people out there. Also know this, like with any new material coming onto the market, until there's a safety standard, if there's an accident, you can lose that material. Whether for right or wrong, if I hate to bring up nuclear power, but part of the reason that people have a sour taste of nuclear power was early nuclear power and safety. If you have a new technology, it comes on the market, you need it to be safe. Because the first time that you have a news article about 15 people dying, even one person dying from that new technology, that technology becomes imperiled. So I really see it as them also sort of giving the nod to, okay, time to build with additive. But Patrick, what do you think? You actually have a pretty parallel product there, man.
All for it. This is certainly needed. I would take it a step further. And what we've seen in getting RENCO approved wasn't the standards or the lack thereof. The fact that we basically had to write our own standards and then test against it because it was a new system. It's not concrete. It's not wood. There isn't a standard that they wrote. So you have to write your own and then test against it with a crazy safety factor. Now, look, it's life safety. As you're saying, they can't make mistakes here. Simplifying that process is huge. I'm glad they're doing it. But the next hurdle to get through is the actual places and the institutions and the place where you can do the tests. We're finishing our seismic testing. There's very, very few, like one or two places to do your seismic testing in the United States of America. And guess what? You can't go to Turkey or China to do it because it doesn't count. You got to do it here. Guess what? You get in line for 9 months and you wait. What do you do? Like, you can't, it's just bureaucracy, and it's a nonprofit, and it's like, it is what it is. So, and that's just like one example, but every test you add up all those. So whether it's government, nonprofits, private sector, I think it's a huge opportunity to really focus on that, the testing process, like the nuance of how you're testing these materials, what goes into it. And streamlining that, because it's a really broken system. I never would have known about it till we just had to go through it. Yeah.
At that, you bring up something there, Patrick, though, because I was having this conversation, and y'all hear me talk about him a lot, with Charlie Dunn, that we don't have an enterprise. We don't have an enterprise data set, right, across the construction industry, because there's really no group to do it. It's an interesting opportunity if you think of the IIJA and the amount of money that gets sunk into infrastructure projects and projects around construction, and the focus on construction in our country, and just how fundamental it is to our economy and our environment, it would make sense to start to have the government think about, or someone think about, bringing a lot of that under an umbrella and starting to include the data, and because then we can really drive innovation, understanding, and advancement across the industry as a whole, and maybe move that 50-year mark a bit more. And those have been some very lucrative opportunities in other industries. So why not our industry? Just a side note to think about. All right. And by the way, I was kidding. Jonathan always brings things that sound boring but become really, really interesting. It's just part of his charm.
Oh,
I'm going to bring y'all one from, you're starting to hear this a little bit more from me, but emergingtechbrew.com. This is another one from my favorite little emailer that keeps me up on things in technology in the world, Tech Brew. It's why the DOE, Department of Energy, brought its energy moonshot factory to CES for the first time. I thought this lined up beautifully with Jonathan's first article. Is the agency wants to show off some of its big bets on the future of green tech. So a lot of you know DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. You can thank things like GPS and the internet and a whole lot of other innovations that became reality in our world to DARPA. Well, now there is an ARPA-E. So it would be the Advanced Research Project Agency for Energy. And it made its first appearance at CES, which, if you guys don't know CES is where all the tech heads go every year to learn about the crazy things that people think about, like when Jonathan was talking about AR and MR and all those things that came out. I think that's like 5 years ago now, when a lot of those devices hit the scene there. And of course, AI was the big thing there this year. But what ARPA is doing, it's designed to fund high risk, high reward projects that are too early for the private sector. Let's be honest, most of the investment that we see in the world that we're familiar with is really commercial investment, right? You're going to invest in Togal, you're going to build it, you're going to make money from it. Prior to that being possible, a lot of the foundational technology, there's no one in their right mind that's going to take that risk, right? It's just too high risk, takes too much money. But we know as an industry, as an as a country, we need to stay ahead. So that's what ARPA's here to do. And they brought several of their technologies to introduce the electronics community to this cutting edge energy innovation that they're supporting. So things like magnets, new magnets that are not built on rare earth metals like neodymium, right? Things that you and I, it doesn't even make a lot of sense. Wood is the new steel. Invent Wood was born out of similar confluence of funding entities, things like that. So I'm really interested, just to know. I didn't even know they were there. So this was a cool article for me to read just to see, because DARPA brought so much to us. Jonathan, I'm kind of wondering if you had a chance to take a look, and what are some of your thoughts on this type of, I don't know, DARPA didn't come to the forefront for a very long time. So to see them come to the forefront is kind of interesting.
It's really good to see. And I think it's those, these are the spark seed. These are the seeds of ideas that sort of make change for the industry. And it's funny to see, I was looking at the wood is the new steel, which is their chemical treatment for wood to give it attributes similar to making it as strong as steel. And, so in this podcast alone, we've talked about 3D printed materials, which can be like 30 different types. Patrick has a material, and now they're doing a sustainable wood material. I think what you start to see with a lot of these research grants, it's like, we would like to try everything so that people that are looking to make a profit can actually look at what's been done and say, okay, this is a road that I can go down to that's safe. Because sometimes you just can't afford the money to go out and fail yourself. And I feel like that's what a lot of these are, they're moonshots, and I think they're super inspiring. But a lot of the times I'm looking for the ones that failed, because that's what I can't afford to do. If I have an idea that's a moonshot, I can afford for it to be successful. If I have an idea that's a moonshot, I can't afford it to be a fail. And I think that these, we've seen similar with some of the hackathons where they're really saying, okay, there's not enough money behind this idea. Let's get everybody together. We'll hack out an idea, and then somebody can take it and run with it. I hope that they stay and continue to go to CES, because boy, is that a fertile ground for innovation.
Right. They're bringing it there to then be picked up and brought commercial. One of the other ones was Pluto, which is really cool. This is a robot. It stands for Pipeline Underground Trenchless Overhaul. If you think about the amount of piping that we have across all the major cities, metropolitan cities in our world, and just the opportunity for methane leaks and for lead piping issues, et cetera, water contamination. It's just crazy. And this robot does an epoxy surface inside of it, well beyond what I understand. But just think, it's this robot that can go through and basically be remotely controlled and go through the piping instead of having to dig it up and fortify it for the future.
Yeah,
that's some stuff.
It is, man. We did what's called bullet replacement a lot, which is where you take a metal bullet with a plastic line and you basically explode old pipes and you replace it with this plastic. So you're dragging this bullet-shaped thing through a pipe. It's destroying the pipe and leaving a pipe behind it. These answers for the bigger pipe where you can't do that don't exist. So it's really nice to see something that doesn't exist. That is a manual job, and it's not a good manual job. It's like a confined area. It's super dangerous. It's all kinds of bad. It did make me think, did you ever do an interview on this one with the guy that made the robot that looks like a worm? Comes in sections. You just put them together and then you pop them up in your ductwork or through your piping. A really
No,
cool
you and I were
product, dude.
talking about that. We got to bring that guy on. But
We'll
no,
get
you and
him
I were
on.
talking about
We'll
him
get
one
him
time.
on.
That'll be another crazy one. I'm interested, Patrick. What are your thoughts? Because you're an entrepreneur, so you found an idea and went with this. What's your thoughts on just the DOE doing this and bringing it to CES?
It's amazing. I love it. Wish there was more of it. Long overdue. While I'm not in elected office, I'm on the President's Export Council right now, and it's a great group of people, all way smarter and way better resumes than me. Really impressive group of people. CEO of Ford and Disney and Accenture or whatever. Anyway, we had a meeting in D.C. I guess about 2 months ago with Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo. And there was the undersecretary for energy was in that meeting, and I actually had a chance to talk about construction a bit, and sort of there was a piece about climate change, and I just sort of blurted out that, hey, guess what? 40+% of all global emissions come from the built environment.
8.
Right? Concrete itself is 8% of emissions, right? If concrete or cement were a country, it'd be the fourth largest polluter in the world. And by the way, we are poised to build the equivalent of a New York City every 40 days for the next 15 years, primarily from concrete and cement. So we need to speed things up here, right? And you need these moonshots to change that trajectory we're on. Yes, a point here and a point there, it does add up, but you need a couple big breakthroughs, in my opinion. So I'm all for this.
Yeah, right. It's just, I'll go to the computer side of things. Like, we had hard drives that were huge, and everybody knows that that's been one of those, the innovator's dilemma, right? How did they get smaller and smaller? New big advancements came out. They'd make micro adjustments and get better and better. And then a new one would come out and it would just disrupt the environment. So we need that here too. So it's awesome to see. And I'm glad to see that we're looking at it as an export too, right? One of the things we do have to do and continue to do as a country is stay ahead. And exports we're never going to go compete in that world of certain types of exports, right? That's always going to be in other countries. We are going to bring a lot of advanced manufacturing here. We're going to advance manufacture new and innovative tools and export our new and original ideas and always stay ahead. That's the idea behind it too. So it's cool to see. I got one more, but this is an easy one because I really want 2024 to kick off. It's had some rough ups and downs already. I mean, I feel like I saw this meme the other day of somebody trying to run off a start line and falling on their face, and then trying to get up and falling again and going, this is how 2024 has felt. It's only 15 days in. But honestly, there's some really great signs. And this one's from Construction Dive. It's super easy. Backlog increases amid easing credit conditions. Builder confidence is securing new work also jumped, fueled by the expectation of rate cuts. So, there's a lot pointing to we've had to manage inflation. There were certain things that had to happen, but that the Federal Reserve's likely to trim the rate by the end of 2024, which, the cost of money drives the cost of construction. And seeing on the horizon a lowering in that cost of money is going to bring people back to the table to build, which is what we needed. And yes, nobody likes a bump in the road, but you got to kind of have a bump in the road to keep things manageable over time. But this was needed. I also think, to me, I'll draw this to technology. When the cost of money changes like that again, investors are going to come back out. We saw the investment market across the world, right? This was not just construction technology that saw a checkup over 2023 and a change in the way we approach it. That was across the board. If you go look at the numbers, I think I covered it recently from another Tech Brew article, just about the amount of limited investment, the amount of investors that pulled back a little bit. So this is another sign that investors are going to probably get back out there and start investing in companies again and start that growth. But hopefully it's to the companies that deserve it, right? There's far too many of those moonshot solutions looking for a problem that probably needed a little checkup through the time. So not only will construction backlog increase, I think you're going to see construction technology investment considerably come back to the table in a not in the way we saw it before. And I don't think anybody wants that, right? Like they're just throwing money at anything. It's not a good environment. We need money thrown at really good ideas that have real problems and real technology. You know, I'm going to call you out on this one. Things like Togal, Patrick, and others that we've had on the show over time that are truly there solving problems, right? That's the core to what we need to do. So I just thought this was a good one to end the show on a positive note. Jonathan, you know I like that.
Yeah, and I think it is a positive note. I think, even though COVID was a long way behind us, I think there was this idea that as people started working from home, business is going to lag because we don't need as many offices and all these other things. And I think that all of those people that specialized in that type of building are looking now and saying, no, there's still things to build. Money's still cheap. We can start to move forward. And if money is going to get cheap again, that really is a good sign. I have to say, Jeff, every once in a while, because of the electrification, because of some of these other things, I look at this and go, wait a second, I don't know that we have people to build all these things right now. Like it's cool that everybody would like to build and that there's a lot of money, but we need some more builders or some more robots or better building styles. So I guess technology hopefully will get a good investment too, and we can create some manpower that does not exist.
I almost covered that one. There was a mega projects list that came out from Construction Dive as well. But I was worried that that's the only place I would be able to go with it. When I started to add up those billion numbers, they were 16.2, 17.8. And I was like, I think I'm going to end this on the wrong note if I do it that way. Like, where are we going to find people to build this stuff? So, Patrick, I'm interested on your outlook, especially because, family business there with Coastal, but then also the technology business in Togal. How are you looking at it and the outlook?
We're lucky to be in Florida. Market's been booming. Our next 3 to 5 years, on paper are going to be our biggest years, ever. Our backlog is through the roof because we're just in a great market, do a lot of condos. Yeah. Believe it or not, we're building offices, right? Still, right? Like probably the only place in the country building offices, some hospitality. So some crazy single family homes, but we're an outlier in a good way this time. We're usually the outlier in the bad way, but in a good way this time. But the one thing I would say too is, like depending on this interest rate adjustment and how dramatic it is, there's a lot of jobs that are teed up and needed in all of our communities, especially in the multifamily, space. So a lot of them are planned, they're permitted, they are ready to go. They're literally shovel ready, right? So when that money becomes available, I think you're going to see it turn on really quick. Hopefully, I'm sure there'll be a bit of spike in pricing there, but hopefully there's no, Suez Canal or something like, random supply chain issue that or COVID, God forbid, to throw a wrench in this. But I think it could come back really quickly to your guys' point. I agree. And I'm excited.
Awesome. That is a great way to end it. I want to thank both of you for joining me. Jonathan, you're always fun to jump onto the microphone on both our shows together, but the ConTech crew always appreciates the ideas you bring here, man. I love having you.
Right on, man. It was great to be on. Patrick, it was great to get a chance to talk to you, and I definitely want to play with those Legos someday.
All right. I'll ship you some. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Patrick, it was awesome. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for everybody. Thank you for tuning in today to geek out for our interview with Patrick Murphy. To read all our news stories, learn more about our guests, and to listen to this show, visit thecontechcrew.com. This is the ConTech Crew signing out. Until next time, enjoy the ride and geek out.